The Cincinnati Bengals have finally completed their 2025 preseason, and their final game gives us a bunch of roster clues as they're getting ready to cut down to 53.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He's Jake. He's James. I'm Jake. He's James Rapien. I'm Jake Liscow. We've been covering your Cincinnati Bengals here on Locked On Bengals since 2016, getting you all the news, analysis, what's going on with the team, everything you need in one place. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts, and become an everyday listener. Shout out to all of you who are already making us part of your everyday routine, and all of you who make Locked On Bengals your first listen. Mercifully, James, as I always say at this time of year, the preseason is now complete. The Bengals have a cut down to 53 players that is due on Tuesday. Waiver claims to follow. I think there are quite a few takeaways in terms of who didn't play and when certain players played and how long certain players played and how certain players played in terms of putting this 53-man roster together. And then further than that, figuring out where the waiver claim priorities should be for this team. But they also sustained a couple of injuries for players that I think were on schedule to make the 53-man roster. Jermaine Burton may have aggravated a knee issue that kept him out of some practices last week. Looked like an ankle. Then it turned out that it may have been an aggravation to the knee. And Daijahn Anthony with a hamstring injury as they're trying to figure out what they've got for backup safety.
Yeah, Daijahn is someone that I think a lot of people assumed would be in that fourth safety spot. And this is one of those that you know right away. It's like, oh, well, Gino's not playing, obvious reasons. Jordan's not playing for obvious reasons. And neither is Tyson. And so it's like, all right, all three of those guys are roster locks. Clearly, those are the trio of safeties that are first in that room. But then you see Daijahn playing a lot. And it's like, okay, well, does he need to earn the job today? Is it because they just need someone back there that they trust? What is it? And then he tweaks his hamstring and was in some obvious pain and was walking around on the sideline and talking with trainers, ultimately went back to the locker room. I think he could have been on the bubble anyway, probably leaning towards making it versus not. But this could throw a total wrench into things as far as, all right, does he make it? Does he not? What can they do with him? What will they do with him, depending on the severity of the injury? So certainly something we're going to have to follow. The Jermaine Burton one stinks. I mean, it stinks for a bunch of reasons. One, he was never on the bubble. I think he was always making the team. He's been dealing with a knee issue for multiple weeks now. Had a really nice catch and run for 16 yards, then had a not so good drop that would have been a first down on a ball that he should have caught, and finished with one catch for 16 yards on 4 targets, and gets hurt on a punt return where right away you're like, he's down. It didn't feel good. And then he gets up very gingerly, gets to the sideline, and he was talking with trainers for multiple minutes before going back to like his actual spot on the bench. And he kind of stayed there. But yeah, hopefully neither injury is serious, because both guys, I think, like you said, we're going to make the team. And you would hate for this team to have to look, especially at safety, for some are going to say, oh, well, you want a replacement anyway. That's fine. But you don't want to be scrambling for a replacement. You want to find a replacement under your own terms. And so I think that they were going to be looking anyway. But hopefully Daijah's health isn't a huge issue in forcing them to do so.
Yeah, so on Jermaine, the biggest impact to me, I think he was making the team. Mitch Tinsley notably dressed and didn't play in this game. He's also making the team. So there's your wide receiver room: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Andre Yosevach, Charlie Jones, Mitch Tinsley, Jermaine Burton. If Jermaine Burton is going to have an injury that's going to keep him out for some period of time, then I think it does get interesting from a return perspective, because I think he is your next man up for the punt return job in particular, where right now, if for whatever reason they needed a substitute punt returner for Charlie Jones in a game, the way that the roster is looking to me right now, I'm not sure who that is, unless there's a guy that's been called up with that role in mind, i.e., like if Isaiah Williams is on the practice squad, for example. For Daijahn, like you said, it's a spot where perhaps they were going to be looking at the waiver wire anyway. One of the positions that I think is very clearly a waiver priority for the Bengals. We'll get to the rest of those positions in a few minutes. But a lot of people, James, are going to be asking whether this opens the door for PJ Jules, who I think impressed a lot of fans today, judging from my interactions on social media during the game. Certainly was all over the field, making big hits, and an emphatic celebrator, drawing a taunting penalty early in the game that I think evoked a groan from many, myself included. If that's the way taunting is enforced in the regular season, everyone's going to hate the taunting rule. Again, nothing new there. But what are your thoughts there? PJ Jules with the Daijahn Anthony injury, does the door open for him, or do we think that they're looking waiver wire or external free agent there if they feel like they need to add a piece of safety?
Yes, everything. I think they're going to look everywhere, and they should, because I think PJ Jules showed him something. I think he's valuable, especially on special teams, and that's where you look at it specifically. It's like, all right, well, who's better? I think PJ Jules is better than Daijahn Anthony on special teams. And so the reason for me why it was a battle is because of that. Your fourth safety, if you know you trust the first three, what do you want your fourth safety to do? Well, certainly be able to play special teams at a high level. You know Tyson Anderson can do that. And so, yeah, I think that's something to really pay attention to, because maybe they just go that route with PJ Jules. I don't think that's out of the question. But even if they did, and they try to get Daijahn Anthony to the practice squad, I still think they're going to look at safety and be looking to see if they can address that spot. It's one of those that certainly stands out from a depth perspective. We weren't off in our assessment basically all offseason talking about safety. I think they know that. Now, will the right guy come along? Will the right player make it to them in waiver priority, or will they be willing to go out and get the Justin Simmonses of the world? I don't know about that. But I don't think that they're ignorant to it. I do think they're aware. And so we'll see what happens there. But no, I think that's one of the multiple positions they're going to be looking at over the next few days to potentially address with someone that isn't currently on the roster.
Yeah, I am in agreement with you there. Tyson Anderson, like you mentioned, did not play in this game. That was a competition in preseason game number 2. Tyson Anderson and Daijahn Anthony got a bunch of run as they were trying to figure out who the next guy would be if they needed a substitute in the case that they lost one of their 2 starting safeties. It appears that Tyson Anderson came out of that battle on top, also has all of the special teams value. We know that he's considered by the Bengals to be their special teams ace, and so didn't need to see anything from Tyson Anderson in this game. Was a decision from Zach Taylor and Al Golden and this coaching staff down to the positional coaches. Needed to see a lot from Daijahn Anthony, apparently, because he was still out there for quite a bit of time until that injury occurred. And then PJ Jules also got a lot of run. Didn't finish the game. They got deeper on the depth chart by the end of the game for PJ Jules. But I do wonder if there is a competition there, like a secondary competition that was occurring this week between Daijahn and PJ Jules, because last week it was Tyson and Daijahn. PJ Jules was an afterthought in week 2. Like, there was no thought for me that PJ Jules was pushing for a roster spot after that second preseason game, where today it seems like, perhaps because of the injury forcing their hand, that door is cracked open for him.
Yeah, I think so. I really do. Now, will he make it? Not saying that. Let's sleep on it. Let's think about it a little bit more before we dive into the 53. But do I think that there's a scenario where PJ Jules makes this roster? And it isn't because of Daijahn Anthony's health. Certainly. There are plenty of other takeaways, thoughts, as far as the deployment. The result doesn't matter. 41-14, irrelevant. But
haven't even mentioned the score until just now.
I figured I would, right?
Yeah.
But who played, when they played, how long they played, all of those things are really, really important. So we'll continue the conversation coming up next.
Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra, Cialis. You've maybe even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Ready. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiette's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in just 15 minutes. And those effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment's right. Especially if traditional options haven't worked, Rougiette might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiette website for full safety information.
Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, well, this week, it's FanDuel Futures Day. That's right. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling for Joe Burrow to win MVP, Jamar Chase to win Offensive Player of the Year, eyeing the Bengals to win the AFC North, think that the Bengals are going to win the AFC, think that they're going to handle business and win Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara, you can make all of those wagers before week one even kicks off. This is your moment, and you can parlay multiple divisions, multiple winners. Maybe you want to parlay the NFC and AFC champions. You can do all of that and so much more with FanDuel. It's FanDuel Futures Day. Visit the FanDuel app today and get started and plan your future bets now, because Future Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
We're going to dive into what we can take away from when different players played, how different players played, how long those different players played. Before we do that, an important request. We only do this once a year. Locked On wants to hear from you. We're soliciting feedback. We've got a survey to learn more about our listeners, and we're going to try to make this podcast and all of your favorite Locked On podcasts better. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can check out that survey, answer some questions about what you like, what you don't like, about our advertising. You'll have a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. We're going to give away 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey, and we'll put a link down in the show notes for you as well on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. That being said, James, what were your biggest thoughts and takeaways as you were thinking about when different players on this roster played, in terms of, oh, that's a giveaway? That's what they're thinking about this roster. Mentioned Mitch Tinsley to this effect earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matt Lee. That was the first one. Our insiders at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBengals knew on Saturday that the plan was for Matt Lee to start. And what was weird, they tricked us, because when they're going through pregame warmup, it's Andrew Rain. Andrew, get your butt out of there. Matt Lee playing the entire first half, and then you get Seth McLaughlin in the second half. Look, I think Matt's going to make the team, but he hasn't played a lot. And I don't think that people here, and I'm at Paycor Stadium for those listening, you can see on YouTube, but the people here in the building, I don't necessarily think that they're as high on Matt as we are. Like, we're like, try him at guard. He's obviously a center that you can plug in and feel good about as your backup center. Like, I'm not saying they don't feel good about it, but I mean, actions speak volumes. And they could have played him on Monday. They decided not to. I think they wanted to take it slow with him. Hopefully that's because they feel like they know what they have. But I did think it was interesting, because it's not like it sounds as cut and dry as it is. I do think he makes the team, but I do think that it might be closer than people realize. And it's not that there's another center that's pushed him. Like, everyone loves Seth McLaughlin. It's not like he's pushed Matt Lee. He's been healthier, which is weird to say, because they've taken it slow with Matt Lee. But, I thought that was really notable, that he was able to get a half of snaps.
And I thought he settled in. He needed to settle in. He had one bad loss in pass pro early. He had the illegal downfield issue early. But outside of that, he looked athletic. We saw the second effort and recovery that you've seen from him throughout his career in pass protection and even in run blocking. I thought he played a good game. He had a couple of bad snaps on that first drive. Not bad snaps as in he was snapping the ball inaccurately, but bad reps. To me, there are five linemen that are making the team. They're the starters: Orlando Brown, Dylan Fairchild, Ted Karras, Lucas Patrick, and Marius Mims. We didn't see Cody Ford. We saw Jalen Rivers play a couple of series before they pulled him. Wanted to get some more work for Jalen Rivers, who, again, when I watched him, I thought he looked solid. And Matt Lee, after those first couple plays, when I watched him, I thought he looked good, moving really well. He gives them something in terms of athleticism that is somewhat rare in the NFL in general. He's a really athletic, smooth mover. And while he does look small, he's a little bit undersized. I continue to be a believer in Matt Lee. And then figuring out the other couple guys that are going to make it on the offensive line, I think is anyone's guess. Devin Cochran, again, not playing this week. Still dealing with an injury there. Jackson Kirkland playing a lot, including kicking up to tackle when Caleb Etienne sustained a leg injury late in the game. And Caleb Etienne was starting after last week, barely getting into the game. So I do think that there are depth questions there on the offensive line. But despite Seth McLaughlin also playing a half in this game, James, I think I agree with you. I'd be surprised if that's really a competition at this point. And if that's not a competition and they don't think it's going to be Matt Lee, I'm not sure where else they turn because of the rest of the questions they have on the offensive line and the other priorities I think they need to have in terms of waiver claims.
Yeah, I think what you could say is, all right, well, do you need Lee if you signed a Reisner and then Lucas Patrick is your backup for both guard spots in center? And my argument would be you need one of them. You need Lee or McLaughlin or someone, because what if Lucas Patrick is playing guard? You're going to need a center, we can like another center that's on the, let's say 10 offensive linemen that you keep, one of those 10. So we'll see. There are paths to it. It also doesn't make much sense because you're talking about a dude that, even if he is small and he isn't the most powerful guy, he's been a good pass protector, works really hard, was ready to go. Like, I will say this, like, Matt has been dealing with this injury, but they've made sure that they're trying to make sure that he's fully ready to go and this doesn't linger. And those actions usually mean, all right, well, we're taking the long-term view because you're here. You're part of our team. You're on. And so I would imagine that he's on the team and he's center too. And I think he should be. I think he's earned that. And even today, you're right. He's been rusty. He hasn't practiced a lot. He needed those reps. But if he really needed those reps and his job was in question, wouldn't he be playing into the third quarter like a lot of these other guys? Like, guys that needed reps are playing into the third quarter, right? And so wouldn't you do that with the draft pick that you're trying to develop? Just a thought.
Especially on the defensive side of the ball. On offense, a little bit more clear cut, mostly the same offensive line for the entire game. Jalen Rivers exited and Matt Lee exited. And then there was the injury that forced Jackson Kirkland over to tackle. But I think on offense, the only other note there is Tanner Hudson not playing at all. Cam Grandy and Tanner McLaughlin playing a lot. And
Hudson.
Yeah, that tells you what they're doing at tight end. They're keeping 4 tight ends. We'll get into it with the full 53-man projection right now. But the only questions to me on the offensive side of the ball really are offensive linemen 9 and 10 if they elect to keep 10 guys. And then I think the injury for Jermaine Burton, depending on the severity there, shakes things up potentially a little bit too. But
no doubt.
Because
then Isaiah Williams makes it.
I think for the return aspect, if nothing else. And he has, like we've said, he was the guy that looked like he was going to be wide receiver 6 early in camp and played a little bit better in this game, had a few plays that were noteworthy for him, showing that he can, in fact, be a wide receiver as well. But you're not really too worried about wide receiver 6 in terms of their offensive impact. Hopefully, most of the time, I think you'd rather have, Jermaine Burton than Isaiah Williams at this point from a potential perspective, but I think the return game aspect is pretty big there. On the defensive side of the ball, though, I think there are a lot of interesting questions that I still have. I think I got maybe one answer in terms of one of the roster battles I was monitoring in this game, James. So let's talk about what we can take away from playing time and performance and when these guys were out there on the defensive side of the ball, where I'm still confused about a couple of roster spots. We'll do that to finish the show coming up next.
This show is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. I play Yahoo Fantasy every year. It's not new to me. Maybe it's new to you. Maybe it's not. But, of course, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league, with season kickoff on September 4th. It's right around the corner. I have a bunch of leagues in the next week that I'm drafting in. Now's the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. If you want more ways to play, try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. I'm excited to play this. I've never been in a Guillotine League. I've heard about them. Now that Yahoo Fantasy has them, guess what? You better believe I'm getting into some Guillotine Leagues. If you want to play instantly with friends, try the new Draft with Friends mode. Prefer the classics. Get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. I have multiple private leagues. And if you don't have a crew, no problem. Join a public league. It's the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off on September 4th. Don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl.
James, we came into this game with questions with quarterback depth, defensive tackle depth, and linebacker depth. I feel like I maybe feel solid about one of those. What are your thoughts based on today's game as far as what we should expect the Bengals to do from a roster move perspective, where there are still questions on this defense?
I wonder. It's so interesting because at defensive tackle, you need as much juice as you can. As much juice as you can have, as much juice as you have, you need to keep every bit of it and make sure you get every ounce of it out. And then at linebacker, it looks like they have a lot of the same guy after the top four, like guys that you can play on defense, but are really good on special teams. And who do you prefer? Who's going to make more plays? Is there a big difference between Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris, for example? Is Mumajong Meta just light years behind them, or are they all similar? I think that's an interesting discussion that we can get into on the 53-man roster projection. And I was thinking of that today. Literally, a lot of this game I spent thinking of the 53-man roster. And it's like it's linebacker and it's defensive tackle and defensive end and how all those fit together and how many you want to keep. And so McKinley Jackson playing deep into the game, into the fourth quarter. Howard Cross doing the same. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, not just had an interception, but could have kept the ball for the defense to give to the offense. He's kicking himself for that. But he has been disruptive. We have noticed 95 some. I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. Is it Howard Cross the third versus McKinley Jackson, or is it Howard Cross the third versus all those linebackers I just mentioned? I think it might be the latter, and that's an interesting dilemma as we get closer to cut down day.
Well, I think Taven Bryan is still in the conversation.
And Taven Bryan. I forgot about him. Yeah, but that's like the defensive end tackle combo. Yeah.
But every time Taven Bryan's been on the field, he's looked like he belongs on the field to me. And I know they're playing against backups, and Taven Bryan's been in the league. I'm still a Taven Bryan ahead of Howard Cross guy. I would try to develop Howard Cross on the practice squad if it were me, but the Bengals seem to love Howard Cross. I just don't know which defensive tackles are keeping. I think it is McKinley Jackson, Howard Cross, Taven Bryan. I think probably two spots for three of those guys. Mm-hmm. And I think you see how it shakes out. I think at linebacker, you really think they're considering keeping six? I think that it looks like Mumajong Meta was buried.
I'm not saying they're keeping six. I think that there are three guys battling for that fifth spot.
For one spot, yeah. And I think Jong Meta is buried because Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris played about 15 snaps each, and then they left, and Muma stayed in for almost the entire game. Maybe he didn't quite finish the fourth quarter, but he was playing a ton in this game. And I love Jong Meta. I liked him last preseason too. He obviously popped right away last preseason, but with the addition of three linebackers between free agency and the draft, it really did seem to me, and has seemed to me throughout this preseason, that he is well behind Shaka Hayward and Joe Giles Harris. And I think those guys are the ones competing really for that last spot. And today did nothing for me to differentiate them. Obviously haven't gone back and rewatched or anything, but I don't know how you make that decision. I think that's one of the really tough decisions, along with the final defensive tackle in particular. If it is Howard Cross, Taven Bryan for that last spot, I think those are some interesting decisions the Bengals have to make here.
Yep. And defensive end too. It goes along with that, like a Cedric Johnson. Because can you go short at end? And you would be short if Trey isn't ready to go. And
that is the problem, isn't it?
But you have to think of that, right? And so I was thinking about that today. And it's just that's something they have to be prepared for unless Trey is done. And I don't think Trey's going to be done before cut down day. And so, yeah, and the other thing is which guys do you think can make it to the practice squad? a lot of times there are guys that are overvalued locally, right? I don't really know. Like, I don't think Howard Cross did so much that he's not going to make the practice squad. I don't think that these linebackers, like Joe Giles-Harris, like, did he do so much that he's not going to make it to the practice squad if you choose to keep 4 linebackers, even if he is your 5th? And is the drop-off from him to Hayward that significant? Like, those are both questions to have that you have to have, because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And you've invested a lot in linebacker, but there's obviously a big 4 and then everybody else.
I was just trying to figure out if Joe Giles-Harris had been claimed on waivers. I know he was waived last year. Which one was a waiver claim for the Bengals? Was it Shaka Hayward that was a waiver claim previously, the in-season waiver claim, or was that Giles-Harris?
Hayward's been here for a while.
Yeah.
Hayward's been here for a while. I can look up Giles-Harris real quick.
But I thought one of them was acquired via waiver acquisition, and now I can't remember which. Regardless, your overall point that most of these guys make it through waivers to the practice squad is typically true. You usually
Giles-Harris was on the practice squad last year for 1 game.
Yeah.
So he was just assigned. He was
just signed to the practice squad. So a lot of times, and I think Bengals fans are traumatized by, the Desmond Briscoes of their history that have made it, have not made it through waivers
Kendrick
and have been signed to other teams. Yeah. And then Kendrick Pryor returned. Usually guys make it through waivers. Now, the one position we haven't talked about and Cam Sample didn't play today, by the way, which means your top 5 guys at edge are set, and Trey Hendrickson is really the wild card there. But at corner, Marco Wilson exited earliest. He also had a pass breakup. So to me, Marco Wilson, that tells us, is cornerback 5. And I've thought, and we've discussed this, that DJ Ivey is likely making the team between special teams role, between his continued development. They've liked him throughout his time in Cincinnati. And then the question really to me, James, is between DJ Ivey and Jalen Davis. Do they feel like they want to keep that backup slot on the 53? Do they feel like they can get one of Jalen Davis or Braylon Lux? And if it's close enough, are they comfortable with that risk of exposing those guys to waivers and hoping one of them hits a practice squad so they have that depth in the slot? They also feel like, I think, they have guys that can play multiple positions in Dax Hill and Josh Newton, and those guys' ability to play inside and outside. I think that's how they feel. So maybe they aren't feeling so pressed to keep a slot corner. But as far as answers for all of these things today, James, I exited today with the Daijahn Anthony injury more confused about safety, with no real clarity at defensive tackle, with no real clarity for linebacker 5, and thinking Marco Wilson is probably ahead for corner 5, and not super certain which direction they'll go at CB6, leaning DJ Ivey. What are your thoughts there, corner?
So spoiler, I have a 53-man that was tentative, but that I've written up, and Marco Wilson was on it. And a DJ was on it as well. There were 2 DJs at corner. There's no JDs. So that gives you Jalen Davis, just for you.
We'll dive into the full 53.
Yeah, I didn't want to give it away too much, but yeah, I think you're spot on. And it is funny. We haven't talked about this, but as you're describing it, I'm like, yeah, I think they're high on Marco Wilson. And it goes back to when they signed him. There were people that were really excited about that. And I think it was because they envisioned this, a back end of the room guy that they thought that they could count on and rely on. And that's what they think he is.
Still have no clarity really on the long snapper battle either. You mentioned that you talked to Evan McPherson about it, but there's a number of spots here that can go either way. And like I said, clear, and I'll let you tell me about what you heard about the long snappers in the locker room in a second. But to me, clear waiver priorities, right? Defensive tackle, safety, offensive line for like a swing tackle or some depth at guard, either of those things on the offensive line, but a couple of offensive line choices. And Dalton Reisner. Is that Dalton Reisner music?
That's right. You know me too well. It's that the locker room's right next to me. It's like Dalton Reisner. It would make it so much easier to operate. Long snapper wise, Evan said he can't tell the difference between either guy.
Me too.
And me 3. But like that's great. he's like, he doesn't notice dependent like on snaps. And I do think that's important. And I think a big part of everyone talks about Evan, but Ryan Rico needed to be better. The long snapper needed to be better. Evan needs to be better. So far, so good. I wish that's my one regret from today's game. I wish they would have gotten like 3 field goal tries. So thank you.
Not kicking that 68-yarder at the end of the half, man.
I would have, but
yeah, I mean, I don't really care. I'm more upset with the timeout called at the end of the game, but also I understood the timeout at the end of the game.
Give them a shot.
Get the touchdown. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get it.
Give those guys, they've been practicing for months for you.
I get it.
Let them get a touchdown. I love it. It sucks. It sucks, but you know.
I don't really care about either of those things.
Peyton Thorne led a touchdown drive.
Yeah, they got the touchdown at the end of the game. Shout out also, while we're on the topic, to Kendall Milton, who looked really good early in this game. Destined for the practice squad most likely, but the Bengals scooped him up after he departed Philly as an undrafted free agent last year. So we'll see what happens there. We'll be back on Monday with some 53-man projections. Tuesday, the cut down day. We'll talk to you then. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Who dey, and have a good one.